Hi and welcome to The Light Leaders, a podcast for light workers who want more money, power and impact. I'm your host, Alex E. Lember. I believe that we are currently in the middle of a global awakening of humanity and that leveraging entrepreneurship is the fastest way to raise the consciousness of our planet. So in this podcast, I interview light workers and conscious entrepreneurs who follow their soul mission and have built a business around it. I call them light leaders, and this is the new paradigm. You will hear their stories and, more importantly, receive tools, tips, and strategies on how you can also impact more people and grow your business while following your soul mission. If you hear little nuggets you love and you'd like to share, screenshot this episode and share on your Instagram stories. Make sure to tag us at the Light Leaders Podcast and we will repost. Hey, before we jump into that interview, there is a phone. I really want to talk to you about this one. It's called the Clear phone. So it's not run by Google or by Apple. It's a different operating system. It's a really good smartphone and I'm really excited about it because if you have educated yourself on what happens to your data when you use Apple and Google, well, often they will use your data and sell it to advertiser and use so much of it. So this is a phone that's encrypted and decentralized and it's run on the blockchain. I'm super passionate about it. It's also a really good smartphone. They ship almost everywhere in the world. So if you're interested, go to thelightleaders.org/clearphone, clear like it's clear, phone, and you'll find more information there. You can also become, like me, a brand ambassador. I'm so passionate about it. So yeah, see you there and enjoy this episode. Hi, and welcome to this new episode of The Light Leaders. Today, I'm with Aaron Kleinerman. He is a transformational sex and relationship coach, facilitator, and speaker. He is the lead male teacher for the Embodied Awakening Academy, a tantric practitioner, and creator of the Conscious Man's Guide to the Bedroom. He has learned from the great masters in the field of sexuality and transformation, including earning a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Aaron went from being a licensed captain navigating ships to a sexual behavior and movement specialist navigating souls. His workshops, retreats, sessions, and speeches help humans integrate body movement, psychology, sexuality, and spirituality. He speaks and teaches honestly and transparently so that others can unlock the real reason for their human existence. Aaron's mastery as a teacher provides the practical tools everyone needs to implement embodied awakened intelligence into daily life. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Aaron, I'd love to ask you first, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful to wake up here in Mama Bali, just to be held by her and to be held by this land, to be here sitting with you. To wake up this morning in a beautiful, loving relationship for over 2 years with my beloved, and to really feel that the actions and the decisions I make every day really are driving my soul's purpose onto this human incarnation. I have deep gratitude to feel deeply aligned with my mission, my vision, my purpose in the world, and that feels really good.
So what's that purpose?
More than anything, it's to awaken individuals to remember the truth of their existence and to remember that when energy becomes aligned inside, then there's a awakening that happens in the heart that can align as the Dharma inside begins to be applied. So I support people in that awakening by mastering the human experience.
And more concretely, in a minute, can you share how your business helped bring that mission into manifestation in the world?
Yeah, for sure. Our vision with the Embodied Awakening Academy is we support people to master the human experience, to integrate consciousness, mind, heart, emotions and sexuality so that energy can actually flow from the base to the crown. And in doing so, really know how a human shows up in the world, what the soul's reason is for the incarnation. So sexuality is a piece of the tantric school, but not everything. Often when I say I'm a male tantra teacher, it's like, oh, that must mean you're in sex parties and orgies, right? But really, we're supporting people to master the human experience and to work with all energies that move through the body.
And I'm excited to have you here because obviously that's a juicy topic in itself, but with your partners in life and in business, Chantel, you've also built a beautiful business around it here in Bali, but also online. So yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been this last year in COVID times, much more focused with here in Bali, but we also have a tremendous online library of online courses and, the whole world that can receive this information far beyond just the workshop in person, actually taking it into their home every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you say with COVID, actually, you focused more on in person?
Well, we had our Living Tantra retreat this past November. We'll be having another one coming up here shortly. And that had been delayed in March of last year. We had 65 people coming in for a retreat and it canceled 5 days before because of COVID. So that was a bit of a logistical nightmare, but we found our way through it. And then really after that, we put a lot more focus into our online training. Okay. So we do have a whole encyclopedia of online courses. Basically, every chakra has a whole 8-week online course, and there's short courses. I have a Conscious Man's Guide to the Bedroom that's been up online for 6-7 years now. And that's really a very introductory course for men, especially just to wake the fuck up and recognize how to be a better lover, both in the bedroom and in the boardroom.
Nice. Yeah, we'll talk about men, about how men need to step up. So that's a beautiful conversation. I'd love to give a little bit of background to the people about you and your story, and focusing on what got you into Tantra and conscious sexuality in the first place, and also how you got to make a business out of that passion.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I mean, I think from a young age for myself, there was always a desire to understand human behavior. I was just reflecting the other day, I was 14 and I counseled my father out of his gambling addiction, and now almost 25 years later, still completely free of gambling. And then in my early 20s, I did a master's in spiritual psychology. But right before that, I was working out at sea as a navigator, learning the skills and trades to be a merchant mariner. So, my life, I should say, the first time I found my soul was being 19 on a ship heading to the Iraqi War, 2002. And, feeling this place of like, what is this world all about? Like, why are we here? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I took a step out on deck after just getting out of the gym, and I saw this black abyss of the ocean. And I had this feeling inside of like wanting to go home, wanting to like return to source, if you call it in that way. And in that exact moment of like feeling this sort of suicidal thoughts was a feeling of like, wow, there's something more that I needed to move through. And I had a lot of chaos and confusion and a hatred towards my mom, towards my dad, to all this stuff that was inside of me. And so instead of jumping overboard, I went back to my computer and started having a deeper dialogue with spirit, with the higher self inside of me. And in doing that, it really started to answer a lot of the questions that I had inside. And that led me into this deeper trajectory of still being in this maritime world, but I was like the guy reading the weird books about, mindfulness and psychology, and spend enough time out at sea and you have a lot of time for reading and writing and the things outside of just, ship work. So, that's what led me into spiritual psychology. And then I started my work as a coach after that, and I was working for a large self-development publishing company. We had thousands of authors around the world sharing stories like, thank God I was raped, thank God my son died, thank God I was sexually molested. All individuals sharing like short, 3 to 5 page stories of overcoming some of life's biggest challenges. Very, very moving. And that I was living in LA, and I was in this self-development bubble, the bubble of kind of Ubud, or even the bubble of anything. And I remember I'd go back to, chat with my family in Boston, and, my family's not in this world at all. And they're like, there's a life outside of self-development. I'm like, yeah. And I was just so deep in it. I didn't know anything different. And eventually, after being in that for so long, I just got a bit disillusioned. And the disillusionment was from a place of seeing so many teachers and speakers saying one thing from stage, and yet their lives were dictating something else. And I noticed that even for myself, I could understand the mysteries of the universe, but yet when it came down to actually making a decision in my life, there was still a lot of limits and blocks. And so I left all of it. I went back out to sea for a little bit, was working in Hawaii until eventually Mother Ayahuasca came into my life and said, hey, I know you love working out on the ship and you have many girlfriends around the world. Life is good. It's beautiful. But, there's something else more that you could do. And I was so resistant because I had a good life. Like, I was making a lot of money. I had worked for half of the year, and half the year I would travel and explore and see all the beautiful places in the world. But inside I knew there was something more. So then I kind of re-emerged into the world of self-development. But as I did, I really, I found the world of Tantra. I found the world of a deeper embodiment where I was meeting teachers who not only could understand things in their consciousness, but could actually feel a deeper embodiment inside. And I started to see in my own coaching practice, because I'd been coaching through that whole amount of time, just kind of on and off, was that most of the shit, most of the issues, most of the stuff that people can't move through is in our lower chakras. It's around our sexuality and emotion. So as I took a deeper dive into my emotional body, into my sexual body, I started to actually feel more spaciousness in my life. And then I started to recognize, wow, I'm getting more clients. I'm getting more people wanting to work with me because I was actually going in and doing the work, as everyone likes to call it, and feeling through all of the muck and the ugliness and the intensity, and especially like integrating the sexual energy up into the heart and taking this kind of more ethereal meditative energy and dropping it down into the heart. And so as both of these centers were showing up more in my life, I had a different series of partners I was teaching with and showing up with. And then, a few years back, Raven and I met, my partner right now. And it was like I'd already been teaching in the world of Tantra, and I just saw our worlds coming together even more beautifully than either one of us could have expected. And such a nice complement for, and it's challenging. It's challenging. It complements the place of where we could come together and teach together. But it's challenging that when you're in a romantic relationship and you're teaching together, all your shit that's unprocessed just gets bubbled up, right?
That's the thing. You think you're enlightened, and then you start being in an intimate romantic relationship, and then you start doing business together, and then you're definitely testing where you're at.
On. Yeah, and our Dharma, like, we made love for the first time on a Wednesday. That weekend, I was in Perth. We had met a month or two before that. And I had a men's retreat that I'd actually pushed back. So then I had some more free time to experience some time there in Perth. And she's like, well, just come and support. She had a big weekend workshop coming up. So we made love for the first time on a Wednesday, and that Saturday, Sunday, we were, I was teaching and holding space with her for a big group. And then a few weeks after that, I had a big Chinese group here in Bali. And then she came out and supported me. So right away, our Dharma was like, okay, you guys are teaching in this world together, which was beautiful, but certainly had its own complications as life went on. I mean, I would say that the biggest thing, and especially on a business side, and I'll speak especially to partners or people who want to journey together, is in any partnership, it's like there's a foursome happening. So the biggest challenge in our business side was my masculine and her masculine meeting each other in like this brother duel.
So a foursome as your masculine and your feminine and her masculine and her feminine.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's really, you know, and that's a big piece of Tantra, and understanding it is that understanding these masculine feminine dynamics, like we're in male bodies right now, but yet there's a feminine essence inside of us. And usually that feminine essence hasn't had a lot of chance to develop and to grow up. So often the issues that come up the most inside of relationships is in the contrasexual relationship. So my feminine with her masculine is where our greatest growth happens. And in business, like our brotherhood, which is really beautiful at times, but she's very alpha, I'm very alpha. And so there's a few moments where like we had very frictioning points of like, whoa, can this actually work? Can we as a couple show up in the highest service and be in loving, you know, service for others, and both be in our masculine or both be in feminine, or however you want to say it? How can our unification come alive to really support people to move forward? And that was a huge learning for myself and for her. And I think it's in that synergy, the reflection that we often get is because that transmission of cohesion is fairly alive. Certainly we're learning and growing all the time like anything else, but it's fairly alive and people really receive a lot from that.
Yeah, that must be challenging and definitely requires embodiment. And this is something we need. So thank you for showing this. You talked about teaching men to be better lover inside the bedroom, but also outside. Do you want to expand a little bit on this work you're doing?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, just a few weeks ago, I finished this men's initiation journey, which is a 7-day retreat for men. And what I think is most important for a male body is to learn how to get out of the mind and how to drop into the body. And being logically driven, kind of intellectual beings that are always trying to find solution to make the problems go away. It's like, you know, we want to go fix the problems all out there in the world, in relationships and business and all that. And it's great. And it's really important for men to have a healthy cultivation of being able to do that. But what I found for myself is a certain point came where I couldn't have necessarily a logical understanding or application of how I could move through something. And I had to learn to surrender into the mystery of my body. I had to learn how to let myself emote without needing to figure out why I was emoting or go into some deep process to try to understand what the issue was. Several years ago, when I really dove into this world of Tantra, I remember I was in a grassy field in New Zealand going through this like really deep dive training. And I found myself just in this like come to Jesus moment, like arms open, pouring rain, like right out of the movies, right? And I watched, because I was just crying and crying. And I watched my mind come in being like, oh, why are you crying? What's going on? And I'm like, I let me deal with you later. Let myself just give the gift of emoting without reason, of letting my emotional body be present without having to understand why. And so one of the biggest gifts I feel like I really support men to move into is a healthy, integrated masculine, you could say. But to have a healthy, integrated masculine means that you have to have a deeper relationship with the feminine inside of you. And you have to let her start to grow up and to feel and to express her needs. Most men, when it comes down to it, we're terrified of expressing our needs because we're like, oh, no one's actually going to listen. You know, why even bother? Like that was a story I ran as a young child. It's like, why am I going to bother expressing my needs? Because they're not going to be met. So I became very self-sufficient, very self-oriented, and I could live and travel and be anywhere. So I think one of the deepest places for a man is to take some of this energy of the mind, drop it down into the art, and also begin to own your sexual penetrative power. One of the places I work a lot with men and masculine energy is dark masculine penetrative power. And now we can look at the world right now, and some of the biggest, condemnation, blasphemy, issues, raping, pillaging, destroying is from very unhealthy kind of dark masculine energy, because we're never taught as men how to have a healthy cultivation of that. Sexuality is repressed. Our emotional body is repressed. So all we know how to do is try to fuck the world with our mind. So if we can actually shift that and learn how to run healthy sexual energy, penetrative, and learn how to penetrate with love, both in the bedroom and in the boardroom, then the way in which a man shows up into the world is entirely different. But to do that, a man has to feel all the places where his sexuality has been pushed down, where someone said you're too much, why are you doing that? And feel all the anger and the rage and the frustration, both for himself as well as for the collective, because men hold a lot of energy inside that they're not actually having enough space and freedom to really allow that expression to come out. So it's very passionate in my heart, and I love holding spaces where men have full permission to go into their everything, because as they go into their everything, then they actually can come back and have a more integrated presence. But healthy, cultivated masculine that is embodied and present means that he has felt everything inside, and then from that space of feeling everything, knows how to be fully present and one with everything and oneness all at the same time.
That's beautiful. One practice I have when I'm angry, for example, is punching a pillow and shouting.
It's a good practice, and I would even what you should do that even more is take the pillow down and then fuck the pillow.
Ooh,
give it a good fucking, because then all that, like, this is our rage here, when we let the rage come from our pelvis, which sometimes if we're in the right dynamic with a woman and that energy can come through in a healthy way, it's beautiful. But often men, the moment they go into those hard, strong pelvic thrusts, it can be too much for the woman. So actually letting that pelvis fully thrust and run all of that, like let that run through the body is so freeing. And actually it starts to open up some of the nadis, the energetic channels in the body, and it starts to unlock these knots of energy that are held at the base.
That's powerful. And that's another layer, even deeper, because I feel as men, we are a little bit ashamed of our power in a way, because it's often misused to start with. And then there's a confusion that if I'm in my power as a man, at least I'll speak for me, if I'm in my power as a man, I will be harmful or dangerous to others, to the feminine. And part of it can be violence, and part of it can be through sex and intimacy. And so one layer of it would be, for me, when I'm angry, not to repress it.
And I love that you bring in that piece with animal, because I feel like one of the biggest disconnect is the dialogue and the dynamicism between animal and consciousness. And sometimes when we get into the bedroom or we get into anger, it's like the animal takes over and consciousness is out the door. Or, people get pissed drunk or something happens on a Friday night, Saturday morning, consciousness comes in like, oh my God, animal, what did you do last night? So the more that a integrative awareness of allowing the animal to have its seat at the table, like it needs a seat at the table because we're in an animal body. We also have a lot of consciousness, but if consciousness is always taking over the animal, then the animal gets like a pissed off, caged being that eventually, when the space is either allowed or not allowed, the animal comes out and it's usually a shit show. It's a complete mess. So why not learn how to have a healthy, cultivated animal in the bedroom as well as out of the bedroom and begin to own that? And when you mentioned about power, the differentiation I always like to say is, can you begin to have power with rather than power over? And true authentic power comes from the mind, from the heart, from the emotions, and from the sex. And as that sexual power is fully owned, and owned from a place of, I know how to run healthy, strong sexual energy, and I'm not afraid of hurting somebody while doing it.
It's beautiful. I'd love to speak a little bit also about how your partner and yourself have built your business around it. So both online and offline. So how did you start?
Well, for myself, after I finished my master's degree in my early 20s, I started coaching. And that was mainly in person. So I've kind of had that one-to-one coaching practice for a long time. And then I was teaching a bit in the yoga world, and then eventually led into the Tantra world. And pretty early on, while I began to open up into the world of Tantra, I kept getting, and this is really good for people who are stepping into any new field, I kept getting introductory calls, and it was the same type of questions over and over and over again about, how to be a better lover, and how to, have semen retention, and how to do all the things that men want to be better lovers. So I just intuitively was like, well, if all these people keep asking me the same question, I might as well create a course that I can just say, hey, go do this course, because then afterwards I can actually support you even better one-to-one. So that was the first course, well before Raven and I got together. And for her, she also had a kind of a background in self-development, and then, came more into this field of Tantra, was teaching with a big kind of sacred sexuality tantric school, stepped away from it. And then as she stepped away from it, Tara, our business partner, came into her life and was like, we need to get you online. So she was like, I don't want anything to do with this, like was very afraid, but Tara really held that. So now, there's 4, 5, 8-week online courses with the Academy. There's a bunch of short courses. So there was just recognizing a need. And it was great because when COVID did happen, we already had a lot of courses that were already there. And I watched all these other people who didn't have that trying to scramble to get like online courses happening so they could keep income flowing in. And I really feel like it's important because there's people we reach that will probably never be able to come into a live workshop. I love like being in a live workshop where I can feel and connect to people in that way. But it's also really important for this work to spread and to grow, to have, the place of that. And, I think for our growth, one of the biggest things that's helped me is like getting out of my own way, getting out of any way of where I think I have an idea of where this is going to lead me. And I think this is really important for like conscious business owners, because usually the mind comes in thinking, I need to do this and that, I need to get that, 6-figure launch, and I need to make all this money and do all these things. But what I find that works really well, for our events, for online things, is how can I make day after day kind of 3-foot tosses? Rather than these big, massive 10-foot toss, I'm going to reach into the atmosphere and make something incredible. What can I do day after day that's going to support my business to grow? What am I doing today that's bringing in money? What am I doing that's supporting me to being in more service? Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a session, maybe it's, whatever it is. And so every day that goes by, you're consciously being present to how your level of service is supporting both yourself and the people that are coming out to you, and reaching out. And for me, it always goes back to service. I know with my maritime career, with this work, if I had more of like a drive to make was more money oriented, I probably could have created different things to do that. But what I've created really supports me to feel like I'm not too overwhelmed, and I can stay inside of loving service every day. Because I've seen, in the last 15 years of coaching, a lot of coaches and a lot of people in this field burn out because they're going, and then they can't necessarily withstand that. So rather than burning out, it's like, can I let this organism just grow and grow and grow, and just trust that as I attune and do my own work along the way, that the right people, places, and experiences are going to keep reaching out, that are going to expand it more and more. And that's what I see happening with us day after day here in Bali, as well as with our global reach. And it's really pretty amazing. Like we were just having a meeting before I came here with the 3 of us that run the Academy together. And we're just like, a new thing came in here, something else, an email here. And it's just like, watching this organism grow, and yet staying in our center of, being in loving service each and every day to support people through some of the challenges that they're moving through right now.
Yeah, because part of what we've been talking about, either on the sexual side, also on the business side, are things that bring a lot of shadow. We didn't use that word, but that's what we were talking about, quite a bit, the shadow work. So I guess that might come into the field also as the business grows.
Oh, for sure. Having a practices in place that support individuals as well as any team that you're working with, where people can actually take a reflective look at what's coming up. Like shadow work, I think, is the most important piece, but actually healthy shadow work. There's a lot of unhealthy projected bullshit flying around where people aren't taking responsibility. And so, I look at this difference between reflection and deflection. With Raven, like we're in relationship. I see her every day. She knows me very well. If she comes to me and shares, "Hey, love, like, I'm experiencing you being this way," not blaming, shaming, condemning me, but saying something that is something she observes within me that can give me an opportunity to grow. Now, one way of looking at that is saying, "Oh no, I'm not that way. What are you talking about?" And doing this like weird self-sovereign bullshit place of like throwing it back on her and saying, "Oh, well, that's just a reflection of you," and not actually like letting it sink inside, both on a personal level as well as a business level. And one of the things that's really supported our business to grow, for me, is having both Raven and Tara there saying like areas that are some of my shadows, where it's like, "Hey, like I don't see you like responding to these messages and showing up in this way. I really need you to do that." And making clear boundaries, but not from a place of pushing somebody down. Because usually when someone says a boundary or something that they need, the first belief, especially for a male psyche, is something that I've done is wrong. So it hits the failure wound inside the male being of like, "Oh my God, I've done something wrong. Now I have to prove to them that I haven't done something wrong so I can validate my worth." And this is a really important piece of, rather than trying to go in that cycle, being like, "Okay, what is this reminding me of? Can I let myself feel, oh wow, that situation that happened in work was reminding me of something that happened when I was 10, 15 years old. Vibrate the emotions around that, and then come back into that work dynamic and say, thank you for sharing with that. How can we do this even more beautifully together?" That very basic shadow reflection place is so important to get out of our own way and to utilize the people who are close to us that in fact see our shadows. Like, this is a very Ubudian thing. Saying, this is my shadow. It's like often our shadows are shadows because we can't fucking see them. Or, I'm triggered by this. That's another huge one. Like, I'm being triggered by this. If you're being triggered, it's triggering something inside of you that should be then an opportunity to go into your own process, rather than utilizing these spiritual words as a way to deflect the place inside that's actually being hit. "Oh, I'm being triggered by you, and you need to be more manly or do this and that." And it's actually, well, when you're being triggered, it's like, thank you for giving me an opportunity to learn and to grow and to take all of that back into my own process, to be like, "Oh, wow, that is bringing up some stuff inside. Let me feel that. Let me move through that." It has nothing to do with that individual. They might have a piece of it inside themselves, but it's giving me an opportunity to go to school, to go to my inner school inside. And then at the end of that, come to them and say, "Oh, thank you. This is what I need moving forward." Learn how to make healthy requests in communication, because that's always the area in business where it just starts to get murky and messy, when people just get in their shit and they're not mature enough to recognize that they're in their shit.
And so your three partners working together, you talked about communication, being very open. At some point you talked about practices. Do you have practices you'd like to share that you feel create a great business partnership environment?
Practices for business. Yeah, I mean, anytime that we come together to do, our business meetings and things, we always just have a check-in beforehand. We do a check-in, like what's happening on a on a business level, what's happening on a personal level, just so we can really feel each other. What I see can happen inside business is immediately it goes to business and to logistics and to getting things done and this, and rather like remembering that there's a human there and, hey, is there anything you need? Not getting lost in the emotions of that, but really meeting both the personality as well as the business, as well as a transcendent soul in this kind of circle of connection inside of business, and also be willing to not be afraid of losing love. And what I mean by that is often, especially when there's romance inside of business or really deep friendship, is that people can find themselves holding their tongue back and not saying how they really feel and mean because they're afraid it might hurt that person's feeling. And this has been such a beautiful representation. And I love actually the friendship I witnessed with Tara and Raven, who they've been business partners well before I was there. And they have such a great capacity to call each other out where they're not showing up to their full power. And then they're not then taking that and saying, oh, you did this. It's like, oh, no, thank you for doing that. I'm recognizing that I can do that, in fact. And it's not like taking it out on them personally and saying like, oh, you got upset with me in that business meeting, and now I'm going to pull away my love and friendship for the next 5 days just to make you feel bad. It's all these little mental psychic games that at this state I have so little patience for. And I find that any new person who's coming into our field that we're wanting to work with, very quickly within the first week or two, it's known is this going to work or not going to work? And because a lot of people don't necessarily have both that mature emotional body as well as the capacity to get shit done. It's so important, especially in our Buddhian culture of just wanting to pontificate about meanings of the universe and, coffee shops for 5-6 hours and then not actually being able to implement things into day-to-day life. One of the big things, I did during COVID were these big integrated masculine and feminine symposiums. And it was okay, I can't have live workshops, and I'm going to bring together 60 or 70 of, the best male and female teachers I know and just get it done and deliver it and make it happen. And so many people were like, oh, how did you do that? I'm like, I just saw a vision. I saw that, a lot of people in the world can benefit from a hour or two workshop from amazing world-class presenters. I'm just going to gather them all together and create a whole symposium on that. And it was and I learned how to do a lot of the programming and the marketing and different things. And I'd never done something, but I just saw it. I saw the vision of what was possible. And then it was boom, 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 one step after another, and each one had, almost 500 people attend. And I was a little bit blown away myself, wow, this is amazing. But it really showed to me that no matter what's happening in the changing tides and currents around you, there's always a way to take a need and necessity, find the level of service that is required in it, and then deliver and be able to make money along the way. When I find coaches or people are oh, I don't have enough clients, I don't know what to do. It's find what your clients need, what the issue is, and then deliver that in a way that's being in service, that's not agenda mind money oriented. Trust that when you're in service and you're vulnerable and you're powerful and you're clear, that people are going to receive that and they're going to step into that container that you create, and then there's going to be more infinite expansion than you ever knew possible.
And that's definitely a feminine heart, listening to the heart wisdom approach that you've integrated into your business life too, because it's interesting to have you, because I have a lot of women in that chair talking to me about that, about how they listen to their body and their heart and they surrender rather than being very goal oriented. But it's much more rare to see men do that. So maybe how did you learn to trust the wisdom of the heart, and how is that helping you more than the mind?
Yeah, beautiful question. Well, for one, I just, if we have a stone here, this beautiful crystal, and thank you for letting me pick up your crystal. What is the only thing that would wear this crystal away?
What do you mean?
The only thing that would, through time, would wear this crystal away. Or a stone or a rock. It's water. Okay. So if I take flowing water and I just put flowing water over this crystal for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, it's eventually just going to start to dissolve away. So there's this belief in our society that the masculine is stronger than the feminine. And I want to completely dissolve that. Like feminine power in her radiance, both in male body and female body, is the most powerful force on the planet. And we're in a collective purging, a collective reshaping of what's really true. And, you know, I had a big learning lesson with this within Raven as well, because when we had that frictional moment a few times and our brothers fighting for like, no, I'm going to be better. I know how to do this. She said to me, and it was such a humbling moment, she's like, well, if I lead from my masculine, who's to say that you being in more your expansive, your intuition and feeling the space and the group, who's to say that's not as powerful? And I was like, what do you mean? Like I could watch this part of my ego that had to die in order to actually recognize that feminine intuition, creativity, awareness, attunement is just as powerful, and I think more powerful than this like very penetrative, powerful masculine. And I'm a persistent fucker when it comes down to things. Like I'm very driven and know how to do that. So the biggest lesson for me has been to actually like take a step back, to feel more deeply, to listen inside to my heart, to my belly, to see what's moving. And then from that place, be able to then make decisions. And, you know, I come from a maritime background where it's like you're on the bridge of a ship. And, you know, if you make a wrong decisions, like when I worked on a cruise ship, I had 5,000 lives behind me every time I would operate the ship. So there's a lot of responsibility there. But I like to, you know, put another analogy in here. It's like on the bridge of a ship, you have a navigator and a co-navigator. And the co-navigator is assimilating all of the wind and the weather and all of the information, the tides and the current and the next port of call and where you're going. And it's taking all of that and it's then giving it to the navigator saying, okay, this is what's present. Are we going right 20 or left 20? Like what's going to happen here? And for most people, we're living our lives as our heart is our co-navigator and our mind is our navigator. What I would want to invite is a switch of that, where the mind becomes the assimilating tool that's just beginning to recognize all of the dynamic equanimity that's present in everyday life. Delivering that, and actually heart math shows that as the mind delivers that information, new neural pathways open up, and there's just as much capacity in the heart to actually make decisions for the life that are in congruency for the soul. And so as the heart becomes the navigator and the mind the co-navigator, there's an entirely different trajectory, which I feel is much more aligned with feminine intuition and awareness.
That's beautiful. It makes me think of people talking about the mind being a grade 7, but a terrible master.
Absolutely.
I would love to ask you also about, so the people who listen to us here, a lot of them would be healers, coaches, network marketers, entrepreneurs. And I find that when people leave being an employee, often they work independently, but a bit alone sometimes, which I find is not the most fun and not the most effective. So I'm really interested in asking leaders how they collaborate. And we talked about how you collaborate with Raven and with Tara as business partners, but also do you collaborate a lot with other circles? And I'm also especially interested in how you collaborate with men, because I feel from the old paradigm, we come from a very competitive landscape. Okay, I'm going to be even in school, the first in the class, and then it's in sports, which probably has a healthy side of it. But then when you want to collaborate, it's important to be good at collaboration and not just want to be the best all the time.
Yeah. No.
So how do you collaborate with other men, and how do you organize that brotherhood in life, but also in business?
I love that question. I mean, the first answer to that is community. Like the house that I live in is 2-villa estate here in Canggu, and there's a whole tribe of just community, and we're all in this field doing our own different things, and we just it's beautiful to have that around other people that are at home on their computers, and then sometimes we'll, share a lunch together, or just as like having tribe and community around you is so important. And I know some people listening might not be here in the utopia of Bali, and they might be at home dealing with lockdowns and all the other things, but like reach out to the people around you and find like a healthy co-working space or some place where you can go and like feel other people in your similar vibration. It's only going to really support you in that way. And the question around collaboration with men, like I think that's so vital and important. And part of it comes from first an understanding that as healers and coaches, the world just needs more and more of us. Like there's such a divine, massive awakening happening right now. And one of the things I always say, to people I'm working with, whether it's a coach or whether it's someone just on their journey, is like the more that I can support them to recognize their own truth, their own unique greatness, their own unique genius, and then to show up in the world in that way, it's only going to inspire others to do that. So any place of competition, I think it's just a joke. Like, who am I competing with? It's like the message that you deliver is going to be different than the message I deliver. And I love the fact that you deliver it to individuals, and they might receive you and they might hear me and be like, who's this guy? There might be people that hear me and they're like, wow, I really relate that. I don't know about Alex. It's like, and why not just celebrate that? It's like we get to celebrate our differences, because if we're all after the same thing, which is, for what I feel, just a continual awakening and a letting go of all of the limiting beliefs and the layers and the knots and all the stuff inside that's inhibiting us from sharing our greatness, then who cares how it comes in? And I'll share actually just recently, just this men's initiation that I ran a few weeks ago, and I'll be doing another one later on the year here in Bali. Like I could have run that whole thing on my own, and it was probably maybe 2 months out from it. And I have a dear brother in Ubud, Shiva, and older man, but like we've been good friends for many years.
He's been on the podcast
beautiful.
Like a year ago.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love Shiva. And the thing I love about him so much is that he's such a representation of a non-competitive spirit. He's like, anytime we've taught workshops together, it's just like, hey, how can I support you? How can you support me? In this particular retreat, like, I had a very clear, clean format. Like I didn't need to have a co-facilitator, and I would have done it just fine. And, I said, hey, but I'd love to actually feel you, because I love how you activate. I know that some of the medicine you bring is different than the way I communicate things. And like, I'm happy to share, some of the profits with you as well. Like, I want to do that. I want to do this in brotherhood. And, he kind of thought about it, and then he's like, all right, I'm in 100%. And one of the things that really touched me so deeply, he's like, no matter what happens through the week, I got your back. Like, I got your back. I'm here to support you completely. Because I was the lead in it, and I was, taking that direction. But just to feel his complete support and service, and it wasn't like, and then he would have the floor to do his things, and I would do the same. And so many men at the end of that retreat were like, this was amazing. But one of the things that really I received so much of is just to feel like like the brotherhood you guys share in loving service in this retreat, and just seeing that there's no place of like, oh, you didn't do that right, and this needs to be this way. It's just like all of that stuff is just fucking bullshit. Like, I love when he just takes over a room and does his thing, and then when I do the same, he's just there completely in service. And I think that place of letting the competition, yes, is healthy. I played a lot of sports as a young man. Like, I love competition. I love winning at games. Like, I'm such a Raven's son Jaleb. Like, when we haven't seen him now for a while because of all the crazy COVID stuff, but like, I love playing card games and stuff, and we love such a competitive spirit, and it's good. I think there's healthy competition in that. But when it's like competition that I need to win because then I'm going to validate my worth, that's just like, let that old paradigm go. It's not serving anyone anymore.
We're approaching the end.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you quickly, what's a daily practice that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, my daily practice, it's consistent in the space of it. It's usually, sitting down and in front of a pillow, yoga mat, just seeing and moving my body, what it looks like every day is usually quite different. There's usually a time period of, again, depending on my day and the time, anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes, where I sometimes will be just sitting in meditation and just, tuning in and bringing silence in. Sometimes I'm much more in like a yoga asana and I'm letting my body move in meditation. Sometimes if like there's stuff moving for me emotionally, I'm just beating the fuck out of a pillow and doing some pillow fucking and letting that energy move. Sometimes, if Raven and I both have some freedom, it's making love together. I find any daily practice that's bringing me in a closer relationship to my breath, to my being and to God is, I feel, a very important practice. But what I feel like is important for anyone listening is that if you don't have a daily practice, I think that's the first place to start. And it's good, like, especially when I'm working with clients for the first time, like I'll give them very set parameters of this amount of time, stop the timer, do this. So it's really become this regimented form and way. For me, with the maritime military background, like I can quite easily go into regimented form. So I like to have that form and then to see what wants to come through inside of that form. And that's kind of the way I live my life, which is like my masculine holding form and structure, and then being like, okay, how is it that I want to feel in my body this morning? How is it that I want to express? What is it that's truly alive inside of me that needs to, have space and time right now?
I call that flexible structure.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. What's next for you and how can people follow you?
What's next? There's lots.
And what do you want to share with
Well,
listeners?
those here in Bali, actually, well, this won't be released tomorrow, but tomorrow in our time right now, you'll be able to see it. We're just putting up our Living Tantra retreat, which is a 8-day journey. Every day is one chakra, and that's a really powerful. We'll be doing that at the end of April in Ubud. So that's definitely a great place to dive into this work in person. And then the initiation journey for men, I'll be running another one of those probably around June. It looks like June, July. I haven't locked in dates, but so if you find out any more about that, you can reach me. IG, the Soul Navigator. You can go to my website, aaronkleinerman.com, and I have a plethora of free resources. We have our own podcast, Love, Sex, and Freedom. There's a lot of places to dive into this work, and lots of online courses. My partner Raven is like almost all of the Embodied Awakening courses are all her. There's a whole year-long practitioner training. There's so much out there. So if you're feeling a call of any of this style of work, of really taking your own tantric journey, reach out. I do sometimes have space in my calendar for one-on-one sessions as well. So lots of places to learn and to grow and to get rid of all the stuff you no longer need so you can actually be the loving embodiment of who you truly are.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much for sharing. I believe the people who listen here really appreciate the embodied side. We're here to raise our consciousness, but also ground it into that physical world and into our manifestations here. And you're definitely very embodied in, and I have a lot of respect for how you lead your business and co-create with people. So thank you for doing that work, for speaking up. And I'm super happy to have had you on this show. Yeah. Do you have a last word for the listener?
Thank you, brother, for who you are and what you're creating and doing and just being your own light leader in the world. I really honor you and I see you. And I think anyone listening, just, taking a deep breath together right now. And in your own capacity, in your own being, just returning to your breath, returning to your heart each and every day to remember, to see, to feel, to believe, to know inside of you that the more that you listen to this heart and wake up to the truth inside of you, that the reason, the purpose, the wisdom inside of your soul gets to be revealed each and every day. And if I can support you in any way in that journey, then let me know. I love you and I see you and I appreciate you.
Thank you for taking some of your precious time to listen to this podcast. If you stayed until the end, I assume it was insightful. If you like this podcast, please share with friends. Remember that if you tag us in your Instagram story at the Light Leaders Podcast, we will repost. Tell us what you've learned. You can also leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Now, if you think I can help you grow your soul mission business, you can register for a free 15-minute coaching call with me. Go to www.thelightleaders.org/free call. Thank you again, and let's co-create the conscious new earth together.